Hello everyone, and welcome to Heretic, Shadow of the Serpent Riders. This game came out in 1994. It is a game that is built on a modified version of the Doom engine. And we're going to be playing through the first of 5 available episodes of this game, getting all kills and secrets in every level. I'm going to be playing on the Black Plague Possesses Thee difficulty. To give a small overview of the difficulties, you have, effectively speaking in terms of enemy and item placement, 2 easy difficulties, a medium, and 2 hard difficulties available. With on the easiest difficulty, you only take 50% damage and also use some items automatically, I believe. And on the hardest difficulty, enemies and projectiles move quite a bit faster than usual. You're not allowed to use cheats, but fortunately enemies don't respawn in this game when you kill them, unlike in Doom's hardest difficulty, Nightmare. So we're just going to get started with level 1. We're starting off with an elven wand and a staff. This is our melee weapon in case we run out of ammo. This is effectively speaking a pistol. If you hold the attack button, you're going to be shooting these gargoyles a little bit inaccurate. Most of the shots are still going to hit if you hold the attack button, but if you just tap it slightly, then more or less every shot will be very accurate. And it's still quite fast even when you tap it like that. So it's definitely worthwhile. Also, I don't know if I mentioned it, but you get 50% extra ammo on this difficulty. And also on the easiest difficulty, actually, when you pick up ammo power-ups. So now we're getting 15 bullets instead of 10 every time we pick one up, and that can be very good. Overall, there are some improvements made to this engine, which allows like special features like looking up and down, which for the most part we're not going to be using. But also a couple of other things which are a bit more mentionable. So after pressing this button, this key comes down and it allows us to open the locked door, which is available to us here. But because we are going for all kills and secrets, we are going to go to this lit up wall over here first. Open it up and we find a secret gargoyle. Now on easier difficulties there would also be a health item here, but because we're playing on the harder one, there's only an armor there which will set our armor to 100, and I believe it reduces incoming damage by 50%, so that's pretty great. As long as we have armor, that's going to be pretty good. Also, with these giant yellow balls, you can see which key you need. This time we needed the yellow one. Other levels will have other keys as well. And this is the second enemy of the game, the golem. This person only has melee attacks for now. We will see a different variety later on in the game, but we'll get to that when we get to that. But with these guys, you can more or less just keep them at bay if you hit them, because every single hit that you do has some sort of knockback effect or usually stuns them a little, so they rarely get close to you if there's just 1 or 2 of them. But slowly descending these stairs, there are a couple enemies that don't hear you attack. Usually even when you attack with the melee weapon they can hear you, but there are the enemies that ambush you. But fortunately, that way we can keep them at bay quite easily by just killing them one at a time. Now, over here is a secret door that opens when you start firing, because these enemies can hear you, and it also has these gloves. And these gloves are, effectively speaking, the chainsaw of the game, and on this first level they are very powerful. For the most part they can be a little dangerous to use, but there is an exception to that rule, but I'll get to that also somewhere in this level. But for now it is a very effective way of clearing out most of the enemies that we're dealing with over here. So we're just going to be using it for a while, because fortunately these enemies are all melee and they do get stunned quite a lot by these chainsaw hands over here. So even though they are right in my face, they ordinarily don't get an attack in, so that's quite nice. Now I said earlier that this weapon functions as a pistol, and for the most part it does, but there is also some exceptions to that as well. It's basically there is an exception to every single weapon in the game as to how it functions. Now, pressing this button will open up that door. There is also a bit of seaweed over here, but it's actually ammo for the ethereal crossbow, I believe it's called. It's a weapon we will be grabbing in just a second, because not only did that button open up that door, it also opened up this, which is a secret teleporter, but also there's a secret door over here. And this secret door leads to a couple different places. First of all, it leads to a couple of golems and this book. This book's pretty great. I'll get to that in a second. But you can see after picking up that book, it shows up in the bottom of their screen here. Because another thing that Heretic added to the Doom engine is the ability to just carry an item around and use it whenever you want. Also, here's the ethereal crossbow. This weapon shoots 3 bolts, one big one in the middle and 2 tiny ones on the side, and they all deal their own amount of damage. And honestly, it's a pretty great weapon. It kills more or less everything here in 1 or 2 hits for the most part, so that's pretty great. So going through that teleporter, we kill that guy, and we come to another thing that this game added, which is wind. Now, for the most part, this is not super noticeable, but when I stop moving, I will slowly move backwards towards the wall. Most weapons aren't affected by this, but this one actually is. Like, the middle bolt isn't, but the other 2 will actually come back to you. So your aim can be a little bit off with this weapon if you're not too close to the enemy. Anyway, because we picked up this book earlier, I'm going to use it now. And what it's going to do is it's going to amplify pretty much every weapon we have, which is pretty great. Like, if we use it, then right now our crossbow shoots way more bolts. Our pistol suddenly shoots 3 instead of 5 things, and we can very easily deal with these undead warriors who are throwing axes at us. So our staff is more or less the same, except that it deals more damage, and our chainsaw hands are not only, I believe, dealing more damage, but they're also healing us the whole time that we're attacking with it. And that makes this thing just incredibly strong, because more often than not, you will just survive using this. And that's just really great. But again, this crossbow, ordinarily it already kills these enemies quite quickly, but with the added effect of the book, you get through everything quite easily. Also, one thing that I didn't mention, we were fighting these undead warriors earlier. There was a backpack behind them, also known as the Bag of Holding. It allows you to carry, I believe, twice as much ammo for your weapons. It functions the same as the backpack in Doom. I'm not even sure if I grabbed it, because one other thing I'm going to do is a so-called pistol start, but we'll get to that on the next level. But for now, that was, I guess I did pick it up, because I have 2 out of 2 items, and it does actually count the Bag of Holding there, but it's mostly going to be kills and secrets that I'm going to be focusing on during this video. Because items, you just don't need them all the time, and it's very easy to miss them, and I don't really want to bother with it, so we're just going to do what we're going to do. So after beating the first map, we will be going to the dungeons, the second map of the game. Now, one cool thing about Heretic and Doom and such, well, there's a couple things. First of all, when you're behind an enemy, they don't always see you, and that's pretty cool. Also, when you have autosaves turned off when you're playing this in GZDoom, or if you're just playing on a source port that's a bit more accurate to the original, when you die and you press the use button, you respawn, but you will only have the first weapon of the game, just basically your elven wand. And the levels are actually pretty well balanced in order to beat the levels with this starting item, because usually there will just be weapons available through the levels. Another thing that's in this game is infighting, because this is effectively Doom in a way. If you get enemies to hit each other, which is a little bit more easier to do with these ranged enemies, then they will just start fighting each other as well until one of them dies, and then they'll just switch back to trying to kill you. But this way, you can conserve a lot of ammo by just not shooting at them. And yeah, it can make the fights a little bit easier. Obviously, if I was shooting right now, the enemies would die a lot quicker, but having the golems off my back just makes this a little bit nicer. Also, you might have seen the undead warriors occasionally use a red axe as a weapon. And that red axe is just, it's random when they use it, but it usually deals way more damage than the green axes that they throw, so you gotta be a little bit careful with that. Also, when they die, they occasionally drop ammo for the ethereal crossbow, so that's also pretty good to have. So, even though I had a lot of infighting going on there, I still only have 40 bullets remaining, which is more or less what you start with, so I'm just gonna make a little loop through here. And now we are going to progress through the level. Just gonna grab my staff and just start swinging at these gargoyles, which are waiting for us in between these doors. Just saving a little bit of ammo here. And there is a secret door over here. I will deal with that in a second, but first of all, we're just gonna open this door. Because there's actually enemies behind fake wall there throwing axes at these golems, and as you can see, that's a lot of damage when you take a red axe to the face. But we're not going to deal with them just yet. I'm actually going to come back for those later, because there is something a little bit interesting later on regarding specifically that enemy type. So first of all, going to go over here, grab this crossbow, and just shoot these gargoyles, like deliberately not going into the light here, because the moment we do, this door will open, which has 3 more undead warriors behind them. And it's nice to deal with these enemies one at a time, because it can get a little bit overwhelming. Going closer to them opens up another door leading to these golems over here, but this weapon is so good. It's not quite a shotgun, but it more or less functions the same. So here's a quiver in this corner, which gives you 30 crossbow bolts back, and that just about fills up all our ammo again, so nothing to worry about there. The main reason we are here is to pick up this yellow key, but there is still a couple of other things hanging out here. There are these blue orbs. They are called claw orbs, and we'll get to that very soon. There is a use for these claw orbs available in this level. There is a little corridor over here which has some armor in it, which then also opens up this door to the golems and undead warriors we just killed. So that's why it's nice to just get that over with. Otherwise, not only will you not have the crossbow to deal with them, you'll have to suddenly fight like 5 of these golems in it just with your pistol, and that kind of sucks. So happy that we didn't have to do that. And over here, there is a button. And this button, there's also a torch, but the torch is not that exciting. The torch, I believe in Doom there's like night vision goggles. I don't fully remember what the item is called. But this functions just about the same. You can activate it whenever you want. It is stored in your inventory, which is nice. But going here, it activates the secret area, and there is a bunch more golems waiting for us behind the door. So we're just going to be holding the fire button here, because they're not going to be able to get close to us with this weapon. So no worries there. Also, an important thing to note, if you're not doing pistol starts, you will carry like items with you to the next level, but you'll only carry one of each item. You can't carry more than that, so that is something you need to be aware of. Also, I picked up a little purple flask over here. I can use this whenever I want, and it will heal 30 hit points, which is nice, because the blue flasks that we've been picking up so far only heal for 10, and they just get used immediately. Now there is a big red thing over there. When we get closer to it, the ceiling will start to come down and try and kill us. So we wait for just a moment before we grab our dragon claw. And this weapon's pretty great. This is just a lot of fun to deal with, because this is weapon number 4, and it functions as a minigun. And almost certainly I'm going to call it a minigun by accident at some point, but it's a lot of fun to use with this weapon as well as all the other weapons that we haven't seen yet. If we use the Book of Power, Tome of something, we will have an added effect to that weapon as well, and we will be seeing that later. But for now, we open this shadowy door, and we see this transparent face. And when we pick that up, there's a bunch of enemies behind it. But that is a shadow sphere, and it functions in 2 different ways. For one, it makes you partially invisible, which makes idle enemies a little bit less likely to attack you. Another, probably more important thing, is that these enemies can no longer hit you with their range attack whenever they use this, because they technically are dealing physical damage with their attacks. And there's a difference between, I guess, physical and magical attacks, if I can believe the internet, because that's how I've seen it described so far. And yeah, all those attacks are physical, so therefore they won't hit. Their melee attack still hits you, so you gotta be a little bit careful with that, but for the most part that's quite useful. Now over here, a bunch of golems. They can't see me until I get too close. Occasionally they won't see me at all, but this one hasn't seen me for some reason. And I'm just going to use my good book over here to destroy these enemies. There's a bunch of exploding barrels there, and also I'm going to shoot out a lot of these chain ball type things whenever I fire a bullet. It will cost 5 bullets per shot right now, and also there's a secret door over here, and there's another secret door over here. But it is really, really strong, so I do quite like using it. I'm going to be talking about these hourglasses in a second, but they are another item while I just heal myself back up on these enemies. There's a map scroll over here. Just like Doom, you have an auto map available when you press the tab button. I don't fully enjoy looking at it, and the reasoning is it looks like this, and it's not very easy on the eyes. But with the map scroll, you can see the full map, and it makes it a little bit easier to find the remaining secrets in this level. So one thing that this game has is damaging floors. They're over here. There's also some more exploding barrels over there. They're technically not barrels, but I'm not sure what to call them. Exploding orbs. Sort of a neat thing that they added in this game is that you can push them away by running into them. Apparently that wasn't in the original Doom engine. I'm willing to believe that. I honestly have no idea, but I'll take their word for it. That's pretty neat. You can push them around, and that way you won't have to accidentally die. And I did earlier say that I was going to be talking about the hourglasses. There are 5 hourglasses in my inventory. When I use one of these, I will put it down in front of me, and after a second or two it explodes. And that room is so good. That deals basically the same amount of damage as a regular explosion, so it kills golems effectively in one hit, and that's quite good. Going in here, there's 2 more undead warriors waiting for us behind this like weird bunker thing. It's a little bit fiddly to deal with. I don't fully enjoy getting close to it because they can just throw those red axes and they're quite damaging. But what I can do with the remaining golems in this room, because there's a couple here, I can place one of these. And yeah, one of them died instantly, the other one just needed 1 more hit to die, and it really is quite powerful, but it can be a little bit fiddly to use due to the fact that you have to like place them in front of them and wait for a second. So over here is another Tome of Power. There's the green key, and some more ammo for all of our weapons. And with that, we will move on to the remainder of this level, waiting for us over here. A few more golems to deal with, but nothing we can't handle. Opening a door with this button, a couple of gargoyles to deal with, but again, outside of them maybe accidentally running away and forgetting to kill them at the end. Not much of an issue to deal with there. You could use your Tome of Power against these enemies, but they're just not really that exciting. There's a little bit of a slightly more difficult area coming up. Also, there was another secret door over there, which contains the Wings of Wrath. Because another thing this game added to the Doom engine is being able to fly with that item, and that's pretty cool. So walking over here spawns a bunch of stuff. I'm just going to use the remainder of my hourglasses here, because I will just be pistol starting effectively my remaining levels. I'll just edit out the fact that I keep dying at the start of every level to show that off. You can also just enter the console and press like map E1, M2 or whatever, and it'll have the same effect. Because cheats don't work in this difficulty unless you turn them on with something like GZDoom. So walking over here, there's a couple items here we can't quite grab. We can use our Wings of Wrath. That's one way that we can just fly up here. And that way we can grab this remaining ammo and health and whatnot that's available to us. Alternatively, you can just stand in front of this wall because it will just open up. But it also lowers this area over here, which has another health item and some more ammo for your weapons if you so desire. So that's pretty cool. So over here is a green door, because it has a giant green orb over here. And this is probably the place where I would most likely tell you to use the Tome of Power, because there is a lot of enemies available here when you pick up the blue key there, provided that you enter the sector that has the door opening thing. When you go over here, the lights turn back on, so I like to just go there immediately because it makes things a little bit more visible, and it means you don't have to use a torch. Also, there's a hidden door over here, which again, with the map scroll, it's pretty easy to find the secrets in this level, but if you're not looking at your map, very easy to miss because it just looks like a pretty regular wall. For the most part, there's just a bunch of extra enemies there. Not much stuff that's too exciting to mention, but you know, it's more enemies to kill. So with that green key that we picked up in that area with the darkness and such, we can go across this damaging water. So one sort of semi-unknown thing is that when you move, your weapon sort of bobs up and down, and you only take damage while running in damaging floors when your weapon hits like the peak of the left or right side of the bob animation, so you can technically avoid taking damage if you just move properly, but it can be a little bit fiddly and it probably isn't worth doing. But yeah, you only take damage at the very end of the animation there, so that's kind of a neat thing. It's more or less useless to know, but you know, it's neat, it's there. Going down these stairs are the remaining enemies waiting for us. I will just quickly show off the torch because, you know, it's there, but I don't... It sort of makes every map look a bit ugly due to the fact that when you use it, like, all the lights are just maxed out. It's a little bit more orange than I think it was in the original game, but that's just a GZDoom thing, I believe. Also, it flickers slightly, which is what was available in the original version, so that's pretty cool. So when we go to our map, we can see in the top left, monsters and secrets are maxed out. Don't think you can see that in the original game, but you can see it here, so that's pretty nice. Alternatively, this thing also has the alternative like HUDs, so you can also see items and stuff. You can pretty much set this up any way you like, so that's pretty cool. But we actually got all the items as well, so pretty happy about that. And that is the end of episode 1, mission 2. And with that, we will go to episode 1, mission 3, the Gatehouse. Small note before we continue. I mentioned previously that if you turn off autosaves in GZDoom, it will allow you to do a pistol start every time by dying. But it turns out that if you load a regular game as well, it will also just keep loading that game every time you die. So for the remainder of this playthrough, I have just done opening the console and pressing map following Y, the name of the map like E1M3, which will effectively have the same effect. I don't think it really makes a difference, but just in case it does, there you go. Now in the Gatehouse, we are going to find a new enemy, the Fire Gargoyle, which technically looks different from a regular one. It's pretty hard to see. Interestingly enough, because it is technically a different enemy from the regular gargoyle, you can cause them to infight with regular gargoyles, just not with fire gargoyles. So you can preserve some ammo that way. For the most part, they are roughly the same, except they have a ranged attack and have considerably more health, I guess. They have a decent amount of health compared to the regular gargoyles who die in like 4 hits. These sometimes take like 8 hits to kill, so it can be a little annoying, but so far we're doing okay. The Elven Wand is good enough to deal with them, and just gonna grab a whole bunch of ammo here before we move on to the next area, maxing out our ammo at 100, dealing with one more fire gargoyle here before we go anywhere. So we can't reach any of this unless we just walk into this platform a couple times. Sometimes you just pick it up because that's how mechanics work in this game. But technically you're not supposed to be able to grab that. I was kind of going to make a point that I wasn't going to grab it, but then I grabbed it by accident. So there you go. Moving onwards in this direction. We can go in the other direction, but it leads to a dead end, and I'd rather have a few more weapons first. And when we enter this room, all those pillars go down and allow me to pick up a whole bunch of ammo. So in a second we will be lowering those pillars again to actually grab all of that good stuff. I'm having a little bit of difficulty seeing some of the gargoyles from time to time, but that's okay. But yeah, there's just a giant line here, so even if you go here, any of these doors will make these platforms lower. And the ammo can be quite nice, especially the ammo for the crossbow. Now there is a green key requirement to go in this direction, so we will go onwards to this way, where there's several golems waiting for us. The kind of annoying thing about a pistol start is that the start of the level can be a little frustrating from time to time. I'll pick that up later, just due to how many golems you have to kill sometimes. Like, I could just run past these, and probably it is better that I do, actually, thinking about it. I wouldn't mind keeping a lot of golems alive here for a problem coming up, because there is a shadow sphere here, which I will use immediately. And now I'm just gonna make all of these guys, and all of these guys, and all of these guys over here. I'm just gonna make them all throw axes at each other, and ultimately, hopefully, spend significantly less ammo trying to get through this area, because my ammo count's not super high right now. And it's a fair number of these undead warriors here, so having them all fight each other is a significantly more ammo-preserving way than trying to fight them all myself. But fortunately, since those golems just hit these guys a lot, because they were all kind of in the middle of it all, I'm going to leave this place with actually a pretty significant amount of ammo. There is still like some undead warriors here, like you can hear them speak. There is also wind in this area, so not all of my projectiles are actually making it to them, and their axes are actually getting hit by the wind as well. So sometimes not only the shadow sphere making them accidentally shoot their projectiles just away from me, because that's just how the shadow sphere works. There's also wind there, and like the combination of those things just makes it more or less impossible for them to hit us if it wasn't for the shadow sphere already making that impossible. It's a big mess. But picked up the flask. Also, we picked up a yellow key there earlier, and we can go through this yellow key door, but I will actually take a small detour over here because this is now lowered, and this is when you're supposed to pick up the armor. But I do like the amount of armor we have right now, so that's okay. Pressing that button opens this door, and I will actually switch to the Elven Wand again, because there is a book here. There's a bunch of enemies that just came out, and another door that opened. And after picking up that book just now, I'm just going to use it immediately and use the Elven Wand to kill all these gargoyles with the extra damage that you deal with the book, because it is quite a significant amount of extra damage that you deal specifically against these enemies. And also, there's one of those things in that little puddle over there that you may or may not have seen me jump into. It was an accident that I jumped down, but you know, it worked out. Accidentally grabbed the weapon that I wanted, so that's nice. But yeah, this little platform here contains the minigun, so that is quite useful. Went through the wrong door. Actually want to go to the other one because this one, maybe you can make this? Nah, maybe. It's a little bit rough, but the other one just takes you to a place where you're actually on the platform itself. And this platform has 2 buttons, one on each side, and they both lower a pretty significant amount of ammo. One more than the other, I suppose, because this one has a quiver for the ethereal crossbow, so having that extra ammo is quite useful. I will now quickly also go in this direction, where we could have gone earlier, but dealing with the golems this way is just a little bit nicer. Plus there's a couple gargoyles on this side, and then one over here as well. Like, there's a whole bunch of stuff. And I'd rather just have the easiest possible time trying to deal with them. And that way we won't have to deal with them later. There's a torch here, which I'm not going to use, but you know it's there, so that's nice. And with that, we can finally go through the yellow key door. Where we will not quite go forward yet, because this wall opens up the moment you walk through the door, containing a couple of golems and a couple of other things, but also instantly get that ammo back that I just used. This gargoyle is getting a little bit lost, but that's okay. I'm gonna go to the right first, because this is a small loop. There's a couple of undead warriors over there. I'm not gonna deal with them just yet, because we will be reaching that area pretty soon from now. And there is the morph ovum, which is an egg. And it's a pretty good egg. I will be using it later. Since he's so close to the door here, I might as well shoot them. But ordinarily, most of your bolts are just going to be hitting the wall there, so it's a little bit annoying to try and fight them from here, but occasionally it works. But yeah, morph ovum. It's an egg. And when you throw that egg, it turns several enemies, because it shoots like 6 projectiles, into a chicken for a short period of time. And them being chicken, also this button opens door here. Them being a chicken makes them have significantly less health and also deal less damage, and that's pretty great. There is some health here, but you have to go through damaging terrain to get it, so that's not wonderful. But going up this tower, just to kill a couple of these dudes and also get the green key, which will open up the exit of this level. But we still got some work to do. This will take you back to the start of the level, which is probably the quickest way to get back to the green door, or at least the easiest way if you're not too familiar with the level. But there is also a little pathway over here. And not only does this contain a couple of enemies, it contains this path again, like we've seen at the start of the level. It contains some gloves, a bag of holding, and another button. And pressing this button opens up a door in the pillar room, which has another book, which is very nice. It has this place, which has all the wind and stuff. And it also is the place where we will be using our egg, whatever the egg is called. And I'll be using it alongside with the book. It just turned a whole bunch of them into chickens, and now I'm just gonna be using my chainsaw here, because this thing is incredible. Even though there's still a bunch of them still alive hitting me all the time, I'm just healing way more than they can deal damage, so that's quite nice. The chickens can be a little buggy. Occasionally they can just teleport through a wall if they happen to be too close to the wall, and they'll be on this side, but usually they'll still be making chicken noises the whole time, so you'll be able to tell when that happens. While our book is still active, just gonna go through here. Gonna press this button to lower that wall, which contains a ghost. And ghosts are just transparent versions of regular enemies, but they have the same shadow sphere advantage that I had. In that physical attacks cannot hit them, and that includes the staff. That's not the staff, that includes the staff. It includes the secondary bolts from this crossbow, and I think another weapon, like a couple other weapons that we will see later on. But for now, that's the end. That was the entire level called the Gatehouse. And with that, we can move on. So far, still getting 100% items collected. Pretty surprising to me, but fair enough. We will be going to episode 1, mission 4, the guard tower. So this map is a bit of a slaughter fest. If we turn around, we can open a door to a not actually a secret book, which also has 2 enemies. I'm just gonna leave them alone for now and just gonna be running around here for a little bit, because there's a lot to pick up and there's a whole bunch of enemies to annoy. And if we just annoy a whole bunch of them first, They're going to be running around away from where they currently are, and that's just a little bit nice. It allows us to pick up some weapons which work a little bit better. There's a torch there. Not going to pick that up, don't need it. And also there's a new enemy type over here, which is the big old flamey golem, who shoots faces at you after they've been on fire for a second. And these enemies have, I think, a little bit more health than the standard golem, and they're quite annoying to deal with, so hopefully we won't have too much trouble. But with our 29 bolts and book in hand, I'm just gonna sit here. There's some infighting going on over there between some of the undead warriors and such, but I'm just gonna use my book and just start shooting. Can very easily heal up with my glowy hands, so if need be I can always switch to that. But there is a lot of health available in this place. It's just that once you've dealt with all the enemies, the level is also more or less out. That's not true. There's 2 areas in this place, but for the most part it's just a whole bunch of shooting in this place before you get to the next area. I'm gonna use this to get some of my health back real quick, and use the remainder of my book to try and deal as much damage to these guys up there, because they can be a little bit tedious to deal with later on. And dealing with them now is just a little bit nicer. Didn't quite kill him, but did a whole bunch of damage to the remaining ones, so I'm not too bothered. There's a little flask here which I'm gonna pick up. There's also another non-secret over here which has 1 enemy inside it. And some armor, which is definitely going to be helping out as well, because I am planning to take a lot of damage in this place. It is a scary spot with a lot of enemies, and I don't like to deal with any of them. But for the most part, we're going to be spending a little bit more time just running around, using our glowy hands on everyone, because it is still quite effective, and trying not to get attacked by the glowy golems every now and then. There is some more infighting going on here between a undead warrior who fell down somehow and the golem that is on the same platform as he is at the start of the level. But they tend to fight each other in some way, shape or form, so far they can just shoot each other as much as they like. They're never gonna kill each other, and if they are, that would be nice, but I'm not expecting it. But with all this carnage, I will just be running back up here. There is a secret door over here. I'll be going through that in a second. Just gonna be dealing with the remaining enemies over here, because we did leave a couple of them alone. Some of them might have been able to follow us somehow, so that's nice. Also, there's still a golem on the other side of the level there, so I'm gonna have to deal with that in a second. Hopefully he won't be too difficult to find. Usually they just try to line themselves towards you, so theoretically he should show up any second here. If not, okay, there we go. If not, I could always just fast forward a bit, but I didn't feel like it would be necessary. So apparently this one won, so there you go. They can win eventually, but it takes a while before they get in position to actually attack each other. But fortunately they did. Pressing that button raises this bridge. When you get the orange key, this becomes a crusher, so that's fun. And I'm just gonna grab some more ammo here, although we don't need as much of it anymore because we dealt with a fair number of them. But with all this, I will be going to that secret door that we opened up a little bit earlier, because now we have the materials required to deal with everything in there. Or rather, it's a better time to go here because there's a whole bunch of ammo for a crossbow, and it's just nice to get that now. There is an egg here, and that egg is going to be useful for a later fight, so I'm just going to be keeping it here. I'm running in a pretty large circle here. This just, he doesn't care. Decided he didn't want to attack us, I guess. There we go. He became active eventually. But if you run in circles here for a second, they all start fighting each other because it's just a mix of regular gargoyles, fire gargoyles, and golems, and it's a mess, but we're just going to use that in our favor and kill everyone around. And we can move on to the next area with the yellow key that we picked up. That teleporter was the only secret in this level, so we've gotten all of that. And this takes us to the next area. Now earlier, we killed some undead warriors on a ledge, and we will be going to where that ledge was right now. And if you go here, it opens up 4 of these golems, and using the egg on them just makes this fight significantly easier to deal with. So using that, we can very quickly leave again and use another book on all the enemies that are over here, because there is a lot again. There's just a whole bunch of enemies in this place, and every time we go anywhere, it's just really nice to be able to shoot a couple extra bolts from our crossbow here. Because, yeah, it's just a whole bunch of gargoyles. There's a green key over there, which is the main reason we went to this sort of Colosseum-type place to begin with. But also, the sheer length of this item is just very useful. It's just a very nice benefit to have to destroy all the enemies here. Don't think I'll be getting all the items this time around, unfortunately, but I will be using that Shadow Sphere we just picked up for another new enemy type, which is the Wizard. And the Wizard is quite a tedious enemy, because he's like continuously invisible, like while he's charging up his attack. And whenever he is like blinking from visible to invisible, during the invisibility he's immune to physical attacks, just like our Shadow Sphere here. And there's still 2 enemies alive, so we will have to run around. But yeah, those wizards become a much bigger problem later on, but for now they're not too bad. Remaining 2 enemies were waiting for us here at the base of this Colosseum, or whatever this building is. I'm actually not too sure what this thing is. It doesn't really work as a Colosseum, I suppose. It's more like a huge tower, but there you go. That was that. It's a pretty short level, but there's a lot going on in it, and it's pretty easy to die in that one. Didn't pick up all the items this time because there's just a bunch of more flasks just lying around in that torch that I didn't pick up earlier. And if you run around, you'll find it, but don't have to worry about it too much with the items we had. But with that, we'll be going to Mission 5 of the first episode, the Citadel. In this level, we start off between 2 inaccessible areas with a golem on each side. We will be getting to that in a moment. But first we're going to just create some chaos here. There's a lot of enemies that are all trying to hurt us in some way. This guy throwing axes at his friend, probably. Yeah. And if we just do like a large loop here, the fire golems will also attack the regular ones, and the Disciples of Desperal, which I'm just going to be calling wizards for the rest of the game most likely, are also shooting at us from above. We'll be dealing with them eventually, but for now, mostly just trying to create a way to get on top of this building here. As everyone's just fighting in between each other here. Don't really want to be part of this if I'm being honest, so let's just leave. Over here is our first secret area. Secret door that has some ammo for the crossbow. And we're just going to ignore enemies as much as we can. The chainsaw is over here, along with some armor. The armor is actually pretty important, because it does keep you alive quite well. And I'm just going to be picking up stuff all over the place, as you can just hear fighting in the background. And the yellow key. There's a couple places we can go right now, but I'd like to first just clear out this entire area first, because it can get a little bit messy. Enemies can just be behind you, and it can be pretty tedious to deal with, especially given our current health situation. There is a couple ways to heal up, because there is a book over here that we can pick up, and combined with the chainsaw, that's just a very powerful healing item. But it can be a little bit tricky to get there, but I think I will actually spend some time to just get that now, because my health is getting pretty low. I don't fully appreciate it, how much these enemies are attacking me right now, so we're just going to jump down here along with the green key that is awaiting us here. Immediately use the book so I can start healing up. There is another way which you can use to lower the amount of damage you take in this area, because there is a Shadow Sphere waiting for us in one of these areas. But I kind of like using the Shadow Sphere a little bit later, because we're going to be walking through a couple of corridors with axes being thrown at us, and it's just a little bit safer to, you know, have the protection against the axes that way. So I kind of like having that. The ethereal crossbow is waiting for us here. If we press the button inside this house, we raise 2 staircases that allow us to progress further into the level. And also shows us the 2 golems that were waiting for us earlier. I will just be quickly hopping into these rooms over here, because it's nice to just get these enemies out of the way. They can be easily forgotten. There's another golem waiting for me there, but this button lowers this red wall. And I think the red boy decided to just fly all over the place, so that's a little unfortunate. Sometimes they fly all the way to the back over there, like that one just did. And he's so far away that it's even a little bit hard to hit from this distance, because the auto aim just doesn't work for it. And I could just look up and down and try to aim that way, but when you're used to the auto aim from this game, you just don't even bother most of the time. Anyway, most of the stuff here is dead. I will actually be grabbing a couple more things here. There is a door here with one enemy and a torch. And the torch is actually kind of useful in this level, so I'm kind of happy to get one of those. And here's just some more health and stuff. So our armor is not great, but not terrible either. There is still a shadow sphere waiting for us down here. Ignore the graphical glitch on the bottom of that door. And usually there's an enemy inside here as well, but the enemy can just fly through one of these windows because it's just another gargoyle, so that does happen from time to time. But with all this, I will just be walking towards the staircase on this side. There are two staircases that we can go down and both have their own corridor of horrible enemies, but I kind of prefer this one simply due to the fact that it just leads to a slightly nicer area. We'll be using the shadow sphere here just to make us invulnerable to the enemies here. It makes life a little bit easier. But as you can probably tell, it's a little difficult to dodge those axes when you're in here with this little room to move around. Walking into these walls will lower them on this side as well. And from here, after a few more golems over here as well, we can jump to the other side here and grab a book and a couple of other things. I will once again be using the book more or less instantly because I do like the health. There is a weapon here what I kind of want to pick up, because the annoying thing when you pick up a weapon, you do switch to it immediately, and I think there is an option to turn that off, but when you've been on this side for a while, three of these guys will start like also going here and flying towards you. These enemies can actually fly sometimes, and that can be quite tedious. But fortunately, if you go to that area first, they're not too bad. Over here is a blue key waiting for us and a whole bunch of enemies shooting at us all the time. And I do like having this book around. It does make life considerably easier. But also over here, there is a lot more infighting going on, and I'm just going to ignore all these guys. Turn on my torch and just fight enemies over here. I have gained another book as well. One of the nice things that can happen, and since I just took a red axe to the face, I'm just going to use it. The Disciples of Despair can sometimes drop one of the Tomes of Power. And obviously that makes just every area considerably easier when you have this weapon at your disposal due to the fact that you can just tank everything. And that's quite nice. Walking into that teleporter leads to a secret area. There's two teleporters and they both lead to the area that you can see. I'm gonna go for this one because I just kind of like having this ammo available to me, and would prefer to use the unpowered version of this weapon just to preserve some ammo, but this is fine. This is gonna do a lot of damage to these wizards. And jumping down, just gotta hope that we don't accidentally get a red axe from this guy, because that does happen on occasion. There is Wings of Wrath waiting for us here, so if we want to, we can just follow the water and we'll teleport back to the start of the level. But I do actually prefer just going down here. I've been hearing this gargoyle for a while now, so I'm actually just gonna be using the wings here to just quickly take care of that before we move on to the rest of the level here. And actually, I could just take the teleporter here. Apparently, golem. Wasn't expecting that one, but fair enough. There should be a couple more enemies here that hopefully won't be too difficult to deal with the weapons we do have available. I will be going on this side now because there's still just a bunch of enemies waiting here, so it's nice to just get that out of the way. And we still have flight, so I can make this a little bit easier on myself. There is another item here which we haven't seen before, which is the Ring of something or another. Might actually be called the Ring of Invulnerability, because that is effectively what it does. It makes you invulnerable for a short period of time, and I'm going to be saving it for a little longer, but it is a very powerful item, but it doesn't last very long, so you got to use it when it's most useful. And I think there's one area in particular which is more or less the most useful place to use it. So the torch here is just really nice because, well, it's really dark in here. And having the torch makes it a little bit easier to see the many undead warriors that are usually wandering around these underground-ish areas. This time, a lot of them have been killed due to infighting and other such things. Sometimes they just start walking around, but there's still like a couple, and without the torch they are really quite difficult to see. So I'm quite happy that we managed to deal with these enemies quite easily this time around. I want to say I saw a gargoyle earlier that I haven't dealt with yet. I can definitely hear one, and there is one over there. Also, I hope that I didn't accidentally miss an enemy upstairs, because they can be a little bit tedious to go back to, because you have to go all the way back up here and then go all the way around. But seeing as I heard a gargoyle, I figured I might as well check it out. But it does seem like everything here is dead. So I believe there's one more secret waiting for us. It's somewhere. It's over here, actually. There is a button. If we press it, it lowers this wall. There is a gargoyle behind it. And an egg. I don't really have a place to use the egg simply due to the fact that we have the invulnerability available to us here. But using it here is quite nice. It makes the whole screen gold. And that's nice. But we can quickly run around here, press this button to open the door leading to the exit. And everything around here is just shooting us. But we got a lot of time bombs from the area that had the invulnerability, and I'm just going to use them a whole bunch. And I could just use the egg on these guys, I suppose, but it's not especially necessary. So I'm just not even going to bother. And just before the invulnerability runs out, everything here seems to be dead. Now, if need be, you can grab some more Wings of Wrath over here, because there is quite a lot of items here that are just barely out of your reach. Most of them you can just grab by jumping into them like this. But if you have wings at your disposal anyway, you might as well just like fly through here. There's a bunch of ammo, a map scroll, armor, and all useful things that we are not going to take to the next level. But you know, if you do, then they are there. And that's nice. There are 2 enemies remaining. Little annoying, because they could more or less be anywhere. Hopefully they're just in one of these corridors that we haven't visited yet. Because that does happen occasionally. Enemies just don't get aggro or just start walking around somewhere. Eventually we should be able to hear them at least when we get close. And having flight here is a little bit nicer as well. It would have been nice if we didn't like mess around so much for periods of time, but so far things seem to be okay. But this is the slightly tedious part of trying to kill all enemies. I think I'm hearing a gargoyle here somewhere. Yeah, I can definitely hear one here. So hopefully he's going to show his face any second now. They might just be inside. Occasionally they'll be... yeah, there we go. That deals with the last enemy of this place. That's all kills and all secrets. So with that, we are just going to run all the way to the area that contains the end of the level. I'm just going to call it a day. I do quite like this level, due to the sheer amount of chaos in pretty much every instance of the level. I've played it a lot in the past couple of days, and it always goes a little weird. Plus, I do like the way this area looks with all the stained glass and such, and there's a lot more of that in the next level, and I'm pretty excited about that one. But yeah, there we go. That was the Citadel. With that, we actually got all items. That I don't think that usually happens, so that's pretty cool. It took a little minute, but we got all the kills and secrets, so I'm pretty happy about that. And the next level we will be going to is the Cathedral. Alright, here is the Cathedral. Starting off with this big trident, red trident in this church-like area. A bunch of golems looking at walls. None of them really caring about me. If we turn back, we can see the yellow key immediately behind us on this pedestal. And 2 cool statue-like things, and both of these are secrets. Going into the first one opens up the second one. The second one unfortunately only contains an enemy, but we do have to go there when we're trying to get all secrets. And now I'll just be running past everything that this place has to offer. Grab the yellow key and just bail out, because this place is filled with stuff and we don't currently really have the weapons to deal with this in a fun way. So I'd rather just let them all fight in between themselves. Yeah, they're already going at it, so I will just run past them. Going in a clockwise motion across this room with all the enemies inside it. Slowly making everything fight everyone else amongst themselves. And pressing this button to lower the elevator on the other side of the room. And because we haven't fired yet, these enemies don't care about us, so that's nice. Making this place a little bit safer to deal with. Because if you get surrounded by these 3 enemies, they can all get a punch in, and that's just a lot of damage. But this place contains the ethereal crossbow. Starting off our arsenal quite well, but before we deal with anything else here, I would actually like a little bit more, so I will just continue to ignore everything here. Press the button. Grab some ammo behind me, and just leave this place alone. Because there's a bunch of undead warriors there, and I don't really want to deal with them. I'd rather just have them fight amongst themselves. And going in here is the worst room. It looks quite nice. There's a lot of stained glass. But the moment we jump down here, everything's gonna start flashing horrendously. But there is a torch in the middle, like where I just went. And torches stop flashing, and that's nice. There is a fake wall here, and you can actually see the enemies fighting amongst each other. And I do actually kind of want to go to that fake wall, so I will just use my only item and just start doing this, because there is a Tome of Power here. Use it immediately. And even though we are surrounded by enemies, a lot of them are actually fighting amongst themselves, making this area quite safe to do with the things we have available right now. Even if they were starting to attack me at this point, it doesn't even matter because so many of them are dead already. Also, I grabbed the Dragon Claw inside this thing over here. And also, there's another secret waiting for us over here containing a map scroll. So that could be useful if you're still trying to find all the things. And over here is yet another secret containing just a bunch of stuff. Just gonna quickly kill everything here because we will actually be going to these enemies later. So it's nice to just get these enemies out of the way. And this leads back to this area which we've ventured to previously, but I don't want to go back there just yet. There is another enemy waiting for us here. I believe this teleports you back to the start. I honestly don't remember. I haven't gone through that teleporter in a long time, so probably wasn't too important. And we're just going to keep on going. Now this place introduces a couple of like almost hexen-like mechanics of trying to get through the level. It sort of assumes you know things like look out for misaligned textures on walls and such, because the only way to get through this level is by using stuff like that. So we actually have to open this like a door, and we have to move on and jump on top of this, which opens up an elevator down there. And if we immediately place one of our cool new hourglasses in there, it more or less kills everything instantly. Unfortunately, we're not able to walk forward there, so I'm gonna have to go all the way around and do that again. But using these hourglasses is a nice way to get through this place rather quickly. None of these guys are fire golems, these guys are. But the ones on that little staircase are not, so they're not too much of a hassle to deal with. Once again, just running in circles around this place, because there is a couple of regular golems and a couple of fire golems, and they really do hate each other quite a lot when they start firing, so that's nice. There's a couple of ghosts actually inside that place right there, like inside the window, where it's quite nice to have the Dragon Claw available, as it will just hit them without any issue. So it's nice to just get a couple of shots in there and later on destroy them. And those golems being there, the ghost ones, is actually also sort of a hint on where you have to go, because it's not immediately obvious as we're running through this cemetery here. Now before I deal with that, I will just open up this. There is a secret door over here containing a shadow sphere, which we'll be using later. Eventually we'll fight a bunch more undead warriors, and it's always nice to be unable to be hit by them. And when we walk towards that Tome of Power, a door is going to open here, containing a bunch more enemies, and the green key. But we can't actually do anything with this green key yet until I go to the golems that I mentioned previously. Because over here, next to there being a bunch of enemies, none of them who like me, there's a button. And that button opens up a staircase that lets you progress through the level. So if you didn't find the button behind this random wall over here, you can get stuck quite easily. So finding that is pretty important. Just gonna pop in here to get a Ring of Invulnerability and just maybe get a couple shots in on one of these golems, because it would be nice if they just dealt with each other a little bit more before I go on my merry way, because there is another secret waiting for us in this area, which is behind this door. Not the most secret of secrets, but there's just a teleporter here, leads you to an egg, counts as a secret. You can go back to that area, but you can also go back to the starting area through this door. And since we have the Tome of Power previously, I'm just going to use it here and just kill a bunch of stuff nice and quick-like. Because a lot of the enemies are still alive. It looks like they didn't do a very good job at infighting here, so fair enough. I didn't really try to get them to infight that much, so I understand that there's still a bunch of people alive here. But with the Tome of Power, we can deal with them quite quickly. Now, we will have to go back here one more time later, but for now, I'm just going to use my Tome of Power to deal with the remaining enemies in this place as well. And nothing to be concerned about. Now, in the graveyard, I pressed the button behind the wall, which I mentioned earlier, and that button actually lowers this staircase here. So if you didn't press that button, this is just going to be inaccessible and makes the level quite difficult, because you won't be able to continue. And behind that door is a bunch of regular gargoyles and fire gargoyles who, of course, immediately start fighting amongst each other. Quickly popping in here to get this quiver and also kill a couple more enemies. This teleporter leads to the fake wall in the flashing room, so if you haven't been there yet, you can go there through this. But it feels significantly more dangerous when you just teleport in there right in the middle of all those enemies, so it's probably not the best way to do that. And over here is another undead warrior guarding a bag of holding. And the moment you walk towards that bag of holding, it's going to lower this elevator with an enemy that hasn't heard us. So if you're using the lightning hands, this guy will have heard you and he'll just attack you from behind. But because we waited, he couldn't hear us because there was just a wall stopping his hearing there, so that's nice. You can use this hourglass to deal a whole bunch of damage to him and pretty much kill him instantly. I'm going to be using the shadow sphere to deal with this hallway because it's just a hallway filled with undead warriors, and this way they can't really do anything to me. Also, there is a small area down there containing a couple more cultists there, but we're not going to deal with them just yet because we're going to press this button, which lowers up this button over here. And that raises this wall in the middle of this area, which is actually the exit to episode 1 mission 7, I believe. But we're not going to go there for a couple reasons. First of all, is we did say that at some point we have to go back to the first room again. Because now that we have the wings that we grabbed somewhere, it was somewhere, you saw it. It was next to the cultists who couldn't see us. We can actually grab a couple items here, which ends up opening a couple of doors and allowing us to kill 4 more gargoyles. And it's the only way, for as far as I know, to get these items and opening these doors, so nice to just get that out of the way. And I'm actually going to press the stop flying button, because the next area we go to, it opened up after we pressed that button there, not that one, the one that opened up the exit. The area that also opened is the area towards the cultists that I mentioned earlier. And this is also a secret area, but it doesn't always count as a secret if you're still in flight mode, so you gotta be a little careful that you're not accidentally flying. And over here, he's gonna grab a bunch of items, and I'm just gonna use up everything that I have on this hallway of horror, because it's just a bunch of nonsense here, and I don't really want to deal with it. But having all the hourglasses kills most of them instantly. Could use a Tome of Power here, but the non-powered up version of this weapon works quite well. And I'd rather not concern myself with it. Just going to use the chainsaw hands for the last one. And I believe that is all kills and secrets, so with that we can go on to this exit instead, which leads to the secret level. All in all, I think it's a really pretty level. It's the first level that really gets you lost, I think, the first time around, just because there's a couple buttons in this level which are in not obvious places, and a couple walls that you have to open that usually are more secret areas, but this time it's just the only way to progress through the level, so it's very easy to get lost in here. But anyway, that was the Cathedral, and next up is episode 1 mission 9, the Graveyard. This level's called the Graveyard because it's where your grave is. So, this level has almost exclusively ghost enemies, which is fun because the ghost undead warrior only throws red axes, so they all hurt significantly. And also, because they're all ghosts, the undead warriors are not gonna be really infighting ever, because all their axes just go through the enemies. So for now, we're just gonna start this off by never shooting a bullet, so most of them are not aggroed yet. Taking one straight to the face and grabbing as much ammo as I can for the dragon claw, because that thing's gonna be quite useful. There is some more ammo waiting for me over here in the form of a bag of holding. These guys have managed to hit each other somehow, so that's nice, and there is a yellow key waiting for us here, along with a button that lowers a Tome of Power. And I will actually be using more or less all the ammo that I have here, so I will just pick up as much as possible. I can pick up twice as much because of the bag of holding, so that's nice as well. And these enemies don't really care about me. It takes a while before you get an ethereal crossbow in this level, so this doesn't help too much. And with this yellow key, I'm just gonna keep on running past everything. There is an egg here, which is gonna be useful a little bit later as well, but for now, we're going to this area, grab some more ammo, and immediately just beeline it to the Dragon Claw. And use our Tome of Power for this effect, which we don't really often use that much, because it uses a lot of ammo. But in this area, is entirely filled with ghost golems that do get hit, actually, by these projectiles, apparently. It makes life a little bit easier to just have the ability to destroy all of them. And that was a lot of our ammo gone immediately. Before the book runs out, I'm actually quickly just going to go here and use it on these enemies as well, because we will actually have to go back through there again. And just destroying as much as possible with this Tome of Power makes life significantly easier. It's very easy to die in this level. But after we've done all that, I'm just going to push this button, which opens up a thing in the middle next to all these raising and lowering platforms, which is always the most fun way to make a level. It makes you run around for a long period of time without really getting anywhere. Take one hit to the face. I'm actually going to use one of my flasks because I do have a lot of those, and eventually this thing will lower to let me go along my merry way. With the green key, we can progress a little bit further into the level. I will just grab a little bit more ammo here and there just in case, because it can get a little bit messy. And switching to the egg, so I can just use it on as many enemies as possible there. Didn't really hit a lot, unfortunately. The chickens become ghosts as well, which I think is pretty funny. But hopefully these remaining undead warriors will die reasonably quickly. It's kind of hard to see them as well, but as long as red axes are getting thrown in my face, I can more or less assume they are still there. I don't particularly like using the hands here too much, because if there's another one, you just get red axes thrown at your face, and that's not great. But apparently we did get more or less all of them here. So that's quite nice. And also, the staff, I guess I could have used, but the staff doesn't actually hurt any of these enemies, because, yeah, they're all ghosts, and the staff just doesn't hit those, unfortunately. But with this, gonna move on. I'm gonna go into this area, which has a lot of gargoyles, which I'm gonna ignore for now. I'm gonna grab this torch and never use it, because it's garbage. And grab the ethereal crossbow finally. Press this button to ignore the many faces getting thrown at us from the top right of this room. And actually, before I go all the way back up there is a shadow sphere here as well, and the shadow sphere is also quite useful in this area, because we are going to be fighting yet some more. The ethereal crossbow, unfortunately, is not as great as it usually is, but it gets the job done reasonably okay for the most part. And you can just see a whole bunch of red axes getting thrown at me from behind, because a lot of doors open behind you as you go through here. And yeah, they contain a whole bunch of undead warriors. And they are no fun. The axes will be going through me, so the gargoyles behind me aren't really going to be doing anything, because they're all getting hit by red axes as well. But this shadow sphere is a lifesaver for this corridor, because there's just so much. You can do this quite slowly, because the doors open individually as you walk past them. But I kind of like doing it like this, because it just gets the most out of your shadow sphere. And it really gets a lot done. There was some wings in that area, which I don't really care about those too much, because there's not much use for them other than that you can fly around here for a bit. But, you know, it's fun. It's a big old area, so it's kind of nice to be able to fly around here. Plus it does look quite nice in here as well. So you can really appreciate the area for what it is, so that's nice. Just making sure I've killed everything here before we move on, but yeah. This place, there's not really much going on here except for some various just stained glass windows. But there is also a Tome of Power there, so that's actually quite nice. So now we have a Tome of Power and a Ring of Invincibility at our disposal. And with that we can go to the final area of the level. It's not a long level, but it is very easy to die in here due to the sheer amount of stuff that you have to deal with. I'm going to be using this crossbow here to deal with the remaining enemies here. Most of them have been infighting a little bit here with the wizards, because they do attack each other from time to time. And the wizards occasionally do get hit by the side bolts from the crossbow as well, so that is quite nice. But the main bolt from the crossbow is actually quite powerful and deals with this area quite well. But we grabbed a blue key earlier. We're going to be using it to open just any of these doors. Gonna go right in the middle of these and look for the switch wherever it is. It's on the wall here. Lowering everything, and immediately just gonna be using the Tome of Power and the other thing, the Ring of Invincibility, to just deal as much damage here as possible. The crossbow is also a little bit better with the Tome of Power, as you're shooting 3 main bolts instead of 1, and that does deal a bunch of extra damage to these ghosts as well. And slowly but surely we have just about destroyed everything. There's a bunch of time bombs here as well, but well, what we had worked just fine. There was another one left. Going into any of these corners opens up the level exit again, and we are still missing one enemy. So I'm going to be walking around for a little bit longer. Unfortunately, I have no idea where the enemy is. Also, I'm playing with quite low volume, so it can take a second before I actually hear them, even though you might be hearing them in the video. So that's can be a little frustrating to watch, but fortunately, there was just one undead warrior waiting for us here somehow, who apparently we just ran past. Fair enough. That was it though. That was the graveyard. You can die here so easily, but this time it worked pretty well. So that was that. That was the secret level. One of the shortest levels in the game for sure, but it gets the job done at destroying you with the amount of red axes that get thrown at you if you don't know how to deal with them. So that's it's nice that we got through that. With that, we will be going back to episode 1, level 7, the Crypts. Now, the Crypts get a little messy. From the get-go, I'm just gonna start shooting walls and stuff, just aggroing everything I can find anywhere nearby. I just want everyone to be fighting so I can just sort of do my own thing. Because from the get-go, there's a couple of gloves that we can pick up here, and they are just a little bit better for our current situation. And going here leads us directly to the yellow key. I'm gonna just quickly try and grab that and then jump down there to get that flask so I can immediately get some health back. And I'm just gonna leave. This place is horrendous and I don't care for it. And I wish to be gone from here as quickly as possible. I'm gonna kill a couple gargoyles every now and then because they are the most likely enemy to follow me, because this place is a little complicated to wander around for non-flying creatures. So it's nice to have the option to just run away from them, and for the most part they'll probably be fighting at least a little bit. Or they'll just hang out there in the middle. They'll eventually, we'll come back for those, whoever remains. But we're gonna keep on going. Green door here, can't do anything with that. There's an egg waiting for us over here. Picking it up makes these 4 golems appear, but it does make a later area, I'd say, significantly easier, so I do like getting it. Watch out for the crusher here. And there is a secret door behind here, but we'll get there a little bit later, because this we're going to be walking in some kind of big circle-like things. Now, up here are a couple of undead warriors, and they are a little tedious to deal with. And I do kind of like using the egg on them. Sometimes one of the undead warriors, like I think this one, will just stand next to them. But this time they didn't, but there we go. That's 2 chickens. There's another one over there. I'm just going to ignore it for now and just kill 2 chickens instead so they do not turn back. Eventually they do turn back to their old form if you don't kill them quickly enough, in like 30 seconds or something. So it is worthwhile to actually kill them while they're in chicken form, because it is a lot quicker. Get those 30 bolts from my crossbow. And just gonna shoot some gargoyles here for a minute before we move on. You can just constantly hear enemies in the background, because we did aggro quite a lot. Even in areas where I don't think we can even be right now, it's likely that we aggroed some of them, just because it's a pretty big open area in terms of like windows and stuff as well, so it's likely that they'll hear you fire if you fire anywhere. Now if you go here, this thing will go down, like both sides, and it's kind of nice to just write it down to take care of these gargoyles here. And would have preferred to go up with that, but sometimes you can't get what you get, so instead we're just gonna press the button on this side and go up like this. There is a green key waiting for us over here. We did see a green door earlier, and we'll get to that, But first, I'm gonna shoot some golems here. We will be getting to this place again as well from a different area, but this is the easiest way to deal with most of the enemies here, so that is a little bit nice. And with all that taken care of, we can go towards a wall. So we may open it and go to the next secret area that's waiting for us. Did we find a secret area yet? We probably did at some point. I don't know if this is the first one actually. But there are 3 gargoyles here. I'm running out of bolts unfortunately, but that problem will resolve itself when we get to it. And I'm gonna jump down on this side of the wall, because there is a secret tome waiting for us. You can jump inside this corridor from up above, but it's very tedious and it's not fun to do. There is a flight power-up as well, but I mean, you don't have to use it. Pressing this button lowers this elevator that effectively leads nowhere, but there is this weapon, which is nice. And because we have the green key, we can go into this area over here and actually open up the green door that's here as well. There's a couple green doors. They all lead roughly to the same area. I'm gonna use 2 of these sand clocks, hourglasses, to deal with the majority of the ghosts here, and then we'll just move on. But yeah, all these green doors effectively lead to the same place, but I like going here first just because there's a couple of enemies before it. Plus there's an armor power-up over there, which is quite useful, obviously. And this is, realistically speaking, the only way to get to this side of the area, so it's nice to just get this part out of the way. Killing a couple more gargoyles before we reach the part where we usually would be if we went through a green door, which is this place. I'm just gonna quickly bum rush this one ghost, and then I'm just gonna sit here and just sort of walk around, just left and right for a second. And usually this causes so much infighting that most of the things are gonna be dead when we come back here. Because I'd want to go through more or less every green door to go into that area. This thing fortunately lowers itself when you come from that side, so that's nice. And with this, back through the damaging floor, and through this door instead. Now this is part one of the we'll be back there soon. Occasionally, I'm going to use the book here immediately. Is what I said, and then I didn't use it. So, 3 enemies were hiding behind this wall. I think they're just permanently aggroed or something, because you can occasionally fight them here. But they do also walk through the teleporter when they get here, so I'm going to use the book and then just start using this immediately. Because it's 3 fire golems, and they can be quite tedious to deal with. There's a new book right here, like immediately as well, so that's really nice. And I'm just going to use this remaining book power to deal with a whole bunch of enemies here. I'm just going to spawn 2 hourglasses immediately at the front of the door and just use the crossbow for the rest, because this deals a lot of damage to everyone here. Quickly go through the door, press the button, go back through it, grab the blue key, go back through the door again, and there is 2 more enemies here after picking up the blue key that were in an area that's previously inaccessible, and it's nice to just have the book available for that moment, because it makes the fight just a little bit quicker. But yeah, this is the same room as we were in previously, just from the bottom, and now we either have the option of going through this door, which is the last of the green doors that we could go through, and we could head towards that area, because we have the blue key now. But I'd rather actually come back through this side, just because we can now deal quite easily with all the remaining golems that are here. But there is also another door that opened the moment we picked up the blue key. And that door is over here. It contains a couple more enemies, it contains a secret area, and it contains some armor and some ammo for this weapon. It puts us back here, which I think is a little bit of an awkward place to be in right now, because I just don't really want to be here. But we can take one of several routes to get back in our preferred destination. This probably being the worst one thinking about it, but whatever, it works, it gets us there. Eventually, it brings us back to the green door, and thus brings us back to this place. I did say earlier that I was gonna go here at some point. The point has come. There is a couple of undead warriors waiting for us here, and it's a little bit nicer to deal with them now that we have just a bit more ammo to work with. Because the ammo situation at the start of the level is quite low, so it's nice to just save up as much as possible to deal with these. And then the remaining gargoyle, who didn't want to die there, but not really a benefit to going here, other than that you can kill these enemies without having to shoot through this little window. Because we will be going to the other side of the window now, and I suppose this probably is a little bit easier to deal with them rather than trying to shoot them from here as you're fighting golems at the same time, so I guess I can see the merit. But walking past these crushers are very murdery. Also, I just went a little bit too far forward, so I'm just going to use my thing here immediately. I'm also going to use the book. I'm just going to try to kill as much stuff as possible in this room before I quickly try to move on here. Get some ammo on the 2 thrones that are in that location. There's 2 large thrones. Also, if you stand on this, it opens a wall on this side, which has 3 wizards. And these can be a little bit tedious to deal with when you have the shadow sphere effect going on, because they will just shoot in almost random directions. So it can be a bit erratic where they're shooting at. But with the Tome of Power, they are quite easily dealt with. And then there's one more ghost over here. And with this teleporter, we can go back down this area to kill one more enemy over here. And was that it? That felt really quick. Yeah, wow. Alright, we got everything. That was all the kills and secrets. And that also just ends this level. I think it's a really nice one. It It's pretty complicated, like the first couple of times, because there's just a lot of different ways to get in that green area, and there's just a lot of enemies to deal with as well. And trying to find a path that doesn't just kill you with a pistol start is actually surprisingly tricky, but it's a fun level, it really is. And with that, we will be going to the last level of this episode, episode 1, mission 8, Hell's Maw. From the get-go, you get attacked by various gargoyles in the Hell's Maw level. I'm going to ignore them for now, because there's also a bunch of undead warriors on the other side, and they haven't noticed me yet, and the moment I shoot, they will notice me. Down here is lava, which damages you twice as quickly as your average damaging floor, so that's fun. And over here is a flight pickup that I'm just going to grab and leave, because this way a whole bunch of enemies are just fighting each other now. I'm going to grab this book and just use it immediately, which is probably not the best way to deal with this situation, but I like it. It usually works, so I'm just going to do it. I'm going to use my crossbow and my regular staff here, not staff, elven wand, to try and kill these enemies as quickly as possible, because I would like to have the book effect for the next area as well. I'm going to destroy a whole bunch of barrels, which do respawn after a second. Press this button, go through the door, and leave again. Because if you go through that door, you open up a bunch of golem rooms. Basically, those doors are closed until you walk through the door there. But they do have windows they can shoot through, and it's a little bit more tedious for you to shoot through the window than it is for them to shoot you repeatedly with their faces. So it is kind of nice to be able to just deal with that as quickly as possible. There is a golem behind me, I think, but we've managed to deal with most of them so far. And those barrels are really treacherous. Like, it's so easy to accidentally just get destroyed because one respawns in your face. There is still a gargoyle alive, so I'm just gonna quickly leave. And after that, we're going to the most interesting area of this level, I would say. Yeah, that's probably the only one. I'm gonna check the other side just in case, but I think it should be fine. Before we go to the next area, I'm gonna just touch every corner here, because every corner has its own secret. A shadow sphere, a bag of holding, a ring of invincibility, probably the most important one, but one I don't really want to use because it sort of oversimplifies the whole thing. But I will be using the shadow sphere against these 3 heads, which immediately notice me because I opened the door and then started firing, so they just know I'm there. If you don't, like, open the door until you've killed all the enemies, then they won't immediately notice you either, and that's pretty cool. So these enemies have 3 different attacks, well, 4 technically. They have a wind attack, which chases you if you don't use a shadow sphere, so I'm happy that I did. They have an ice ball, which explodes into smaller ice shards, but it goes through you if you have the shadow sphere, so that's also nice. They have a fire attack, which just hurts, and they have a melee attack as well, which is not that exciting. But the shards still hurt you with the shadow sphere, but yeah, they do die pretty quickly when you just sort of circle around the arena and shoot them a lot, so that's kind of nice. And now, there's a lot of enemies still remaining. A bunch of them dropped eggs, which is a thing they can drop, which is pretty cool. But I'm just going to use this book, and I'm going to use invulnerability to just destroy this room that's entirely filled with nonsense. Somehow, the bosses were not even remotely close to being the most difficult part of this level. But I do think they're quite interesting. Later on, they will actually show up as just regular enemies, but that's more for the later episodes. Still chicken alive, yeah. And that's the level. That's all kills and secrets. I probably didn't pick up every item because I do actually have flight, so I can grab all of these flasks with relative ease, but I'm already at 14. I could also just use another invulnerability ring because the arena is also filled with, I think, 1 invincibility ring and 1 book of power, I believe. Like, there's a couple of them in here. It's just very useful to be circling this place because it can get quite dicey otherwise. But there's a lot of flasks in this area, so even without the book, even without kind of cheesing it with the Ring of Invincibility, which basically cheeses every fight in the game if you have it, but I mean that's kind of the point of the item. It's still pretty doable, as long as you keep in mind that the lava does hurt a lot. Like, the amount of damage you take, I mean, it's 50% lower because I have armor, but the speed upon which you take this damage is pretty wild, so it can get quite dicey. But that is the last level of this episode. Beating it ends up with this splash screen where it says the following: With the destruction of the Iron Liches and their minions, the last of the undead are already from this plane of existence. Those creatures had to come from somewhere though, and you have the sneaky suspicion that the fiery portal of Hell's Maw opens onto their home dimension. To make sure that more undead or even worse things don't come through, you'll have to seal Hell's Maw from the other side, of course. This means that you have to get stuck in a very unfriendly world, but no one ever said being a heretic was easy. And a little credit screen at the end there. Now Hell's Maw is also the name of the second chapter of the game, which I hope to cover in a later video at some point. But that is the first chapter of Heretic. I hope you all enjoyed it. I really enjoyed this game, so it's fun to actually be playing through it, because I never grew up with this, so it's kind of neat to finally experience this for what it is, because I've played so many games inspired by this game, but never Heretic itself. So it's a good run. But I hope y'all enjoyed it, and I hope to see y'all next time. I don't know when I'm going to record Chapter 2, but hopefully at some point. Bye-bye.